The crystal walls of the Galactic Council chamber glowed with soft blue light. Hundreds of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved silently through the air. Some looked like walking trees with silver bark. Others resembled giant butterflies with 6 arms. A few were made of living rock that sparkled in the chamber's light. At the center of it all stood Speaker Vethkari. She was 12 feet tall and made entirely of clear crystal. Light passed through her body and created rainbow patterns on the walls. When she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We gather today to decide the fate of humanity," Vethkari announced. The chamber fell silent. Even the floating chairs stopped moving. Ambassador Chen Wei sat alone in the defendant's chair. She was a small woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her dark suit looked plain compared to the colorful robes and natural beauty of the alien council members. But her eyes were sharp and alert. She watched everything with the patience of someone who had seen many battles. "The humans have broken galactic law again," continued Vethkari. "They have taken 3 star systems without permission. They have built colonies on worlds that belong to other species. When we told them to leave, they refused." Murmurs filled the chamber. The tree-like Verdani rustled their leaves in anger. The butterfly mothcurry fluttered their wings rapidly. The rock people called the Granite Collective made rumbling sounds deep in their stone chests. "This is not the first time," said Council Member Zixtar, a purple creature with 8 tentacles. "The humans have caused trouble since they joined our community. They start fights. They take what they want. They do not follow the rules." Ambassador Chen did not react. She kept her hands folded in her lap and her face calm. But inside she was thinking. The humans had not started any fights. They had only defended themselves when other species attacked their ships. They had not taken anything that belonged to others. They had claimed empty worlds that no one else wanted, but the Council did not want to hear explanations. They had made up their minds long ago. "We have tried to teach the humans how to behave," Vethkari said. "We have given them warnings. We have limited their trade rights. We have restricted their travel. Nothing has worked. They continue to cause problems." The speaker's crystal body began to glow brighter. "Therefore, the Council has decided on exile. The humans will be removed from all civilized worlds. They will be sent to a place where they can no longer harm others." Chen felt her heart skip a beat. Exile was serious. Most species that were exiled simply died in space, unable to find a world that could support them. "The humans will be sent to Kepler 442c, Vethkari announced. "Classification, Deathworld Class 15. Shocked gasps filled the chamber. Even some of the council members looked surprised. A Class 15 Deathworld was considered impossible to survive on. The classification system only went up to 15, and Kepler 442c was the worst planet they had ever found. "Speaker," said Council Member Thane, a tall blue creature with 4 arms. "Perhaps that is too harsh. Class 15 means certain death. Even our best environmental suits cannot protect anyone on that world." Vethkari's light grew even brighter. "The humans have shown they cannot live peacefully with others. If they are so strong and independent, let them prove it on a world that will test every skill they have." Chen finally spoke. "May I ask about the planet's conditions?" "You may," Vethkari replied coldly. "Kepler 442c orbits 2 stars, explained the Council's science advisor, a floating brain in a glass case. "The orbit is unstable. Sometimes the planet is very close to both stars. The surface temperature reaches 400 degrees. Sometimes it swings far away. Then the temperature drops to -80 degrees. The brain continued its explanation. "The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen with traces of oxygen, but the pressure changes constantly. Massive earthquakes happen every few hours. The gravity varies from 0.8 to 2.3 times Earth normal depending on where you are. The native life forms are all predators," added another council member. "We have never found any prey animals. Somehow, creatures the size of Earth elephants survive by hunting each other. They have natural armor that can stop energy weapons. Their claws can cut through steel. The rain is acidic," the brain concluded. "It will dissolve most metals in minutes. There are also gravitational anomalies that can crush a spaceship without warning." Chen listened to all of this without changing her expression. Around the chamber, alien council members shook their heads sadly. They believed they were listening to humanity's death sentence. "How long do we have to prepare?" Chen asked. 3 months, Vethkari replied. "You will take only what you can carry on your ships. No heavy equipment. No terraforming tools. No weapons that might damage the planet's ecosystem. And our population? All humans must leave civilized space. No exceptions, Chen nodded slowly. I understand Vethkari expected begging. She expected tears or anger or desperate bargaining. Instead, the human ambassador simply stood up and straightened her jacket. The human delegation accepts the council's decision, Chen said formally. We will be ready to depart in 3 months. You accept? Vethkari asked, surprised. Chen smiled for the first time during the hearing. It was not a happy smile or a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. We accept, Chen repeated. Humanity has always been good at making new homes. The smile made several council members uncomfortable. They had expected the humans to fight the decision or try to negotiate. Instead, Chen looked almost pleased. As the council session ended, the aliens filed out quickly. They whispered among themselves about the strange human reaction. Most felt guilty about sending an entire species to their deaths. But they also felt relieved. The troublesome humans would finally be gone. Only Vethkari remained in the chamber with Chen, the crystal being floated closer to the human ambassador. You do realize what this means? Vethkari asked quietly. Class 15 worlds are death sentences. No species has ever survived on one for more than a few days. Chen looked up at the towering alien. Speaker, with respect, you and your council have never really understood humans. What do you mean? You see a death world. We see a world that other species cannot take from us. Chen picked up her briefcase and walked toward the exit. Thank you for the gift. Vethkari watched the small human leave. For the first time in her 1,000-year life, she wondered if the council had made a mistake. But it was too late now. The decision was made. 3 months later, the last human ships left civilized space. They carried 12 billion people toward a planet that should have been their tomb. Instead of desperate refugees, they looked like colonists heading to a new frontier. The Galactic Council marked the date in their records as the end of the human problem. They had no idea it was actually the beginning of something much larger. Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the stars ahead. Behind her, the captain was already planning their approach to Kepler 442c. Think we can do it, Ambassador? The captain asked. Chen's smile returned. Captain, our species survived ice ages, supervolcanoes, and world wars. We climbed out of caves and built cities on every continent of Earth. We learned to live in deserts, jungles, mountains, and Arctic wastelands. She gestured toward the view screen showing their destination. This is just another home waiting for humans to make it work. 3 years had passed since the last human ship disappeared into the void. The Galactic Council had almost forgotten about them. Life went on as usual in civilized space. Trade continued between worlds. Diplomatic meetings solved small problems between species. The galaxy seemed more peaceful without humans causing trouble. But council regulations required a check on all exile planets every 3 years. It was mostly a formality. The monitoring probes usually found empty. Worlds with scattered remains of whatever species had been sent there. The probe designated Monitor 7 dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Its advanced sensors immediately began scanning for signs of life. The probe's artificial intelligence was programmed to expect nothing but a dead world. Instead, it found something impossible. Detecting multiple energy signatures on planetary surface, the probe reported to its distant controllers. Signatures indicate large-scale construction and power generation. The probe moved closer to Kepler 442c. Its cameras focused on the planet's surface. What it saw made its programming struggle to process the information. Cities. Actual cities with lights and moving vehicles. Massive structures that seemed to be built into the planet's crust itself. And everywhere signs of active human life. This cannot be correct, muttered Science Council member Helix as he reviewed the probe's initial data. He was a slug-like creature with 12 eyes on stalks that let him see in all directions at once. Run a full diagnostic on the probe's sensors. Sensors are functioning normally, reported his assistant. The readings are accurate. On the planet's surface, Commander Sarah Martinez was leading her daily inspection of Settlement Alpha. She wore a modified environmental suit that looked nothing like standard Galactic Council equipment. The suit was made from local materials, a flexible metal that the planet's intense heat and cold had helped them discover. Temperature's going to hit 380 degrees in 6 hours, called out Dr. Kim Patel from his weather station. Then we'll have a cold snap down to -70 tonight. Sarah nodded. 3 years ago, those temperature swings would have killed everyone. Now they were just part of daily life. How are the thermal exchangers holding up? She asked. Better than expected, Kim replied. We're actually generating more power than we're using. The extreme temperature differences create massive amounts of energy when we cycle them through the conversion systems. The humans had learned to work with the planet instead of fighting it. When the temperature soared, they channeled that heat into their industrial processes. Giant forges used the planet's natural fire to create new alloys. When the cold came, they used the temperature difference to power their cities. Underground, geologist teams had mapped the planet's earthquake patterns. What should have been deadly disasters became opportunities. Dr. James Chen led a team that had learned to predict when and where the ground would split open. They built their cities in the safest spots and used the seismic energy to power massive machines. Earthquake in Sector 7 in about 2 hours, James announced over the settlement's communication system. Magnitude 8.2. All teams prepare for energy collection. Around the settlement, humans moved with practiced efficiency. They had lived through hundreds of these earthquakes. Each one taught them something new about their strange world. But the biggest surprise was what they had discovered. About the planet's native life, Dr. Rachel Okoye had been studying the massive predators that roamed Kepler 442c. The creatures were the size of Earth, elephants but built like wolves. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that could stop laser fire. Bioelectric organs in their skulls let them generate lightning. The council had called them unkillable monsters. Rachel called them thunderpacks. Easy, big guy, Rachel said as she approached one of the creatures. It was resting in the shadow of a rock formation, its electric organs crackling softly. The creature was twice her size and could have killed her in seconds. Instead, it made a low rumbling sound and lowered its massive head. Rachel scratched behind its ears, careful to avoid the electrical discharge points. The breakthrough had come 18 months ago. Rachel realized that these creatures behaved like pack animals. They were not mindless killers. They were intelligent hunters who worked together, and like many pack animals, they could form bonds with other species. The first successful contact happened by accident. A human work crew had been trapped by a landslide with several thunderpack creatures. Instead of fighting, both groups had worked together to escape. The humans shared their emergency food supplies. The creatures used their electrical abilities to power the humans' emergency beacon. Now 6 human settlements had thunderpack partners. The creatures provided electrical power and protection. The humans provided medical care, food cultivation, and friendship. Settlement Beta reports successful harvest of acid grass, came a radio message. The thunderpacks helped clear the predators that were eating the crops. Sarah smiled inside her helmet. The acidic rain that fell on Kepler 442c would dissolve most metals in minutes, but it had also created unique plant life. The acid grass was incredibly nutritious and grew fast in the hostile environment. Humans could eat it after processing, and it provided excellent feed for their thunderpack companions. Monitor 7 probe recorded all of this with growing confusion. Its sensors detected children playing in modified play areas while their parents worked on terraforming projects. It saw humans riding in vehicles alongside the massive predators that should have eaten them years ago. Most disturbing to the probe's programming was the technology. Humans were using materials and methods that did not exist in Galactic Council databases. Their cities were built from compounds that formed naturally in the planet's extreme conditions. Their power systems used principles that Council scientists said were impossible. How are they generating that much energy? Helix asked his team of analysts. The readings show power output equivalent to a Class 3 civilization, but they're using completely unknown methods. They appear to be using the planet's natural systems, his assistant replied. Temperature differentials, seismic activity, atmospheric pressure changes, even the electrical discharge from the native fauna. Helix's 12 eyes all focused on the data displays. They're treating the entire planet as a machine. On Kepler 442c, engineer Tom Rodriguez was explaining exactly that concept to a group of new arrivals. The latest transport had brought families from the outer settlements to visit Settlement Alpha. The key is to stop thinking of this place as hostile, Tom said to the group of children who had gathered around him. This planet isn't trying to kill us. It's just very active, like a really energetic friend who plays rough. One of the children, a girl about 10 years old, raised her hand. My dad says the earthquakes used to scare him. They scared all of us at first, Tom admitted. But now we know they're how the planet talks to us. Big earthquake means the planet is shifting around, making new minerals and metals for us to use. Small earthquake means it's just stretching. The children laughed. To them, Kepler 442c was not a death world. It was home. They had never known anything else. What about the Thunderpacks? Asked a boy. Are they really dangerous? Tom pointed to where several of the massive creatures were resting near the settlement's power grid. Their electrical organs provided steady current to the city's systems. Dangerous if you're rude to them, Tom said. But they're family now. Just really big family with lightning. Monitor 7 continued its surveillance for 6 more hours. It recorded humans swimming in acid-resistant pools while Thunderpacks watched over them like giant guard dogs. It saw children learning to read earthquake patterns as easily as children on other worlds learned to read books. It documented farming techniques that used gravitational anomalies to create floating gardens. Most shocking of all, it recorded humans singing. Work songs, celebration songs, lullabies for their children. These were not desperate survivors clinging to life. These were people who had made a home. The probe's final transmission before humans disabled it was a single image. A human family having a picnic on a hilltop while 2 baby Thunderpacks played nearby. In the background, the twin suns of Kepler 442 painted the sky in brilliant colors. The family was laughing. When that image reached the Galactic Council, Helix stared at it for a long time. Finally, he spoke to his assistant. File this under impossible but true, he said quietly, and mark the human exile as ongoing. He did not know what else to call it. The humans had not just survived their death sentence. They had turned it into something that looked remarkably like paradise. 5 years after arriving on Kepler 442c, humanity was ready for its next step. Captain Rex Nakamura stood on the bridge of the HSS Endeavour, watching the strange purple clouds of the Veil Nebula grow larger on his view screen. This was the first time humans had left their exile world since arriving, but they were not the same humans who had been banished by the Galactic Council. Rex's skin had a slight gray tint from years of exposure to Kepler 442c's radiation. His bones were denser from the variable gravity. His eyes could see in near darkness thanks to adaptations his medical team had developed. Most importantly, his ship was built from materials that should not have existed. Captain, we're approaching the nebula's edge, reported Navigation Officer Lisa Park. Like Rex, she showed the physical changes that came from living on a death world, but her voice was steady and confident. Any response from the probe signals? Rex asked. Still detecting the same patterns, replied communications specialist David Kim. Definitely artificial. Definitely old. Whatever's in there has been trying to talk to someone for a very long time. The Endeavour entered the Veil Nebula without slowing down. The ship's hull was made from compounds that formed naturally in Kepler 442c's extreme conditions. The exotic radiation that would have killed most Galactic Council crews simply washed over them harmlessly. Rex and his crew had volunteered for this mission, but they were not really volunteers anymore. The radiation exposure, genetic modifications, and symbiotic organisms they carried made them something new. They were still human, but they were humans adapted for impossible environments. Radiation levels would be lethal to unmodified humans, reported Dr. Sarah Chen from her science station. Good thing we're not unmodified anymore. The modifications had been necessary for survival on Kepler 442c. Symbiotic, bacteria in their bloodstream, processed radiation and turned it into useful energy. Engineered organs filtered toxins that would have killed their ancestors. Modified bone structure handled gravity changes that would have crushed normal humans. They had not planned to change so much, but their world had demanded it, and humans had always been good at adapting. Contact, announced David suddenly. Something big is moving toward us. On the view screen, shapes emerged from the purple mist. They were not ships in any traditional sense. They looked like enormous jellyfish made of light and energy. Dozens of them surrounded the Endeavour, moving with graceful intelligence. Captain, David said, his voice filled with wonder. They're talking to us. Not through radio or quantum signals. They're speaking directly into our brains. Rex felt it too. A voice that was not a voice, speaking in concepts rather than words. Welcome, young ones. We are the architects. You have come far to find us. We detected your signals, Rex replied, not sure if he was speaking aloud or thinking his response. We came to investigate. Few species can survive the journey here. Fewer still can process our communication. You are unusual. Dr. Chen stepped forward. What are you? Where do you come from? We were like you once. Physical beings bound to a single world. Our planet became uninhabitable, much like the world where you were exiled. But where you adapted to harsh conditions, we transcended them entirely. The largest of the light beings moved closer to the ship. Through the view screen, Rex could see patterns of energy flowing through its translucent body. Your species interests us. Most races either flee from hostile worlds or try to dominate them. You do neither. You join with them. You become part of them while remaining yourselves. It wasn't exactly a choice, Rex admitted. We were sent to Kepler 442c to die. We had to change or perish, and yet you did not just survive. You thrived. You formed partnerships with predators. You turned natural disasters into tools. You made the impossible merely difficult. Lisa stepped up beside Rex. Are there others like us? Other species that adapt instead of flee? Many have tried. Most failed. Some succeeded but lost themselves in the process. You are the first we have encountered who changed without losing your essential nature. The architects began sharing images directly into the humans' minds. Rex saw worlds of incredible beauty and terrible danger, planets where the atmosphere was pure acid, worlds where gravity changed direction every few hours, places where the laws of physics worked differently than anywhere else in the galaxy. These worlds are considered uninhabitable by the Galactic Council. They are dismissed as curiosities or natural hazards. But to species like yours, they're opportunities. Rex finished the thought. Precisely. We offer you knowledge, young ones. Not technology that you can copy, but understanding that you can build upon. In exchange, we ask only that you remember us and carry our legacy forward. Over the next several hours, the architects shared their accumulated wisdom. They showed Rex's crew how to read the patterns of reality itself, how to find the hidden connections between seemingly hostile environments, how to recognize worlds that appeared dead but were actually full of potential. Most importantly, they shared locations, star charts that marked worlds the Galactic Council had never properly explored, planets dismissed as too dangerous or too strange to bother with. Why are you helping us? Dr. Chen asked. Because you represent something we lost long ago. The courage to remain physical beings while embracing change. You are what we might have become if we had chosen differently. The largest architect pulsed with what might have been sadness. We transcended our limitations, but in doing so, we lost the ability to grow through challenge. We became perfect and static. You remain imperfect and dynamic. That is a precious thing. Rex felt a new understanding forming in his mind. The architects were not just ancient beings who had evolved beyond physical form. They were the ghosts of a species that had taken adaptation too far. They had become pure consciousness, but they had lost the struggle that made existence meaningful. We won't make that mistake, Rex promised. We believe you will not. Your species seems to understand that the challenge is as important as the victory. As the conversation continued, Rex began to see the larger picture. The Galactic Council controlled hundreds of worlds, but they were all similar, comfortable, safe, predictable. They had built a civilization that avoided challenges rather than embracing them. But the galaxy was full of worlds that could only be claimed by species willing to change and grow. The architect's gift was not just knowledge. It was a map to an entirely different kind of empire. There are others, Rex realized. Other species that were exiled or cast out. Species that learn to survive in impossible places. Many. They believe they are alone. They do not know that survival can become something greater than mere existence. Rex looked at his crew. They had come to the Veil Nebula as explorers from a single settlement. They were returning as the advanced scouts of something much larger. Thank you, Rex said to the architects. We'll make good use of what you've taught us. We know you will. And perhaps one day, when you have grown beyond even what we achieved, you will find a young species struggling as you once did, and you will offer them the same gift we offer you today. The light beings began to fade back into the purple mists of the nebula, but their final message remained clear in the humans' minds. The galaxy is larger and stranger than the Council knows. Make it yours. As the Endeavor left the Veil Nebula, Rex reviewed the star charts the architects had shared. 17 worlds that no Galactic Council species could survive on. 17 opportunities for humans to build something unprecedented. Set course for Kepler 442c, Rex ordered. We need to start organizing expeditions. Sir? Lisa asked. What do we tell the settlements? Rex smiled. It was the same kind of smile Ambassador Chen had worn in the council chambers 5 years ago. We tell them it's time to stop thinking of ourselves as exiles, Rex said. We're colonists now, and we have a lot of work to do. Behind them, the Veil Nebula pulsed with ancient light. The architects watched the small human ship disappear into hyperspace, carrying knowledge that would reshape the galaxy. For the first time in millions of years, they felt something like hope. 8 years had passed since the exile began. The Galactic Council still believed humanity was slowly dying on a single Deathworld. They were wrong on both counts. Admiral Lisa Chen stood on the observation deck of the HSS Phoenix, watching the construction of humanity's newest settlement on Proxima 7. Unlike her mother, who had faced the Council as a diplomat, Lisa had grown up on Kepler 442c. She had never known a world that did not try to kill its inhabitants every few hours. Gravity generators are holding steady at 12G, reported Chief Engineer Mark Torres. The workers are handling it better than expected. Lisa nodded. The humans working on Proxima 7's surface moved differently than their cousins on other worlds. Their bones were incredibly dense. Their hearts had developed extra chambers to pump blood against the crushing gravity. Their entire skeletal structure had adapted over 2 generations of life in impossible conditions. Any word from the other settlements? Lisa asked. Dante's Rest reports successful crystalline harvests, replied Communications Officer Janet Wu. Their volcanic forges are producing materials we've never seen before. The frozen harbor settlements have made contact with ice-based life forms, and the Stormworld colonies have learned to fly. Lisa smiled at that last report. The Stormworld colonies lived on a planet where the atmosphere was so turbulent that the ground was never safe. Humans there had developed modified lung capacity and hollow bones. They spent most of their time in the air, riding the constant hurricanes in cities that never touched the ground. Each world had changed its human inhabitants in different ways. But quantum communication networks, gifted by the architects, kept all 17 settlements in constant contact. Humanity was becoming not just one adapted species, but many specialized variations of the same core identity. Admiral, Janet continued, we're also receiving signals from non-human settlements. The Krillian exile colonies want to establish trade agreements. The Sithkari refugees have asked for medical assistance. This was the real secret of humanity's expansion. They were not alone among the galaxy's outcasts. The Krillians had been exiled for being too aggressive. They were warriors who could not stop fighting even when there was no war to fight. The Galactic Council had sent them to a world of eternal storms, expecting them to destroy each other. Instead, they had learned to channel their aggression into survival and construction. They built fortresses that could withstand anything nature threw at them. The Sithkari had been exiled for being too weird. They were shapeshifters who made other species uncomfortable. The Council had sent them to a world where the environment changed constantly, thinking it would confuse them to death. Instead, the Sithkari had found paradise. They could adapt their bodies to match any environmental shift. Dozens of other species had been cast out over the millennia, species that were too curious, too independent, too different, or too dangerous for the Council's orderly civilization. Most had died in exile, but some had survived and a few had thrived. Humanity had found them all. The Vorthak Collective wants to share their bioengineering techniques, Janet reported. In exchange for our gravitational manipulation methods. Lisa considered this. The Vorthak had been exiled for genetic experimentation that the Council considered too risky. They had been sent to a world where radiation constantly mutated all life forms. Most species would have died from cancer within days. The Vorthak had learned to control mutation itself, guiding genetic changes in helpful directions. Approved, Lisa decided, but standard precautions, no experiments near populated areas. This was how the network operated. Each exiled species had developed unique solutions to impossible problems. By sharing knowledge and resources, they had all become stronger than they could have been alone. Dr. Kevin Park worked in the deep laboratories beneath Kepler 442c's main settlement. He was part of a joint research team that included humans, Krillians, Sithkari, and 3 other exiled species. Together, they were developing technologies that no single species could have created. The crystalline consciousness has agreed to join the network, Kevin announced to his team. They're offering computational power in exchange for protection. The crystalline consciousness was perhaps the strangest member of their growing alliance. They were living minerals that thought collectively. The Galactic Council had exiled them for being too alien to communicate with. But the collective had learned to survive on worlds where silicon-based life was possible. They could process information faster than any computer. What kind of protection do they need? Asked Vex, a Krillian researcher whose natural armor had adapted to include radiation shielding. The Council is sending survey teams to their sector, Kevin explained, looking for new mining opportunities. The consciousness is worried about being discovered. This was the constant threat. The Galactic Council believed all exiled species were dead. If they discovered the truth, they might decide to finish what exile had started. But the network was preparing for that possibility. On the war world of Ragnarok Prime, General Sarah Kim reviewed defensive plans with her mixed species command staff. Humans had claimed Ragnarok Prime because it was considered too dangerous for military bases. The planet's crust was riddled with unstable energy deposits that made traditional weapons useless, perfect for species that had learned to use environmental dangers as tools. The Sithkari infiltration teams are in position, reported her intelligence chief, a shape-shifted alien who currently looked like a human with golden skin. If the Council sends fleets to any of our worlds, we'll know about it weeks in advance. And our defensive capabilities? Sarah asked. Each world is prepared for siege conditions, replied Colonel James Reed, a human whose body had been modified for the high radiation environment of Ragnarok Prime. More importantly, we're prepared for evacuation if necessary. The network can relocate entire populations within days. This was humanity's greatest achievement, not just surviving impossible worlds, but creating a civilization that was itself impossible to destroy. The network had no central point of failure. No single world or species was essential. If one settlement was threatened, the others could absorb its population and continue the mission. But Sarah hoped it would never come to that. The network was not just about survival anymore. It was about growth. Intelligence reports that the Council's outer colonies are struggling, Sarah continued. Climate problems on agricultural worlds, equipment failures in mining operations. They're so focused on comfort and safety that they've forgotten how to deal with real challenges. Opportunity? Asked the Sithkari intelligence chief. Possibly. If the Council's civilization starts to fail, the galaxy will need alternatives. Meanwhile, on the research station orbiting the gas giant Tempest, Dr. Maria Santos worked on humanity's most ambitious project yet. She was trying to create a new form of life entirely. The atmospheric processors are working, she reported to Admiral Chen during their weekly conference call. We're actually growing a living ecosystem inside Tempest's atmosphere. Plants that float in gas clouds, animals that swim through methane storms. It's like creating a world from scratch. This was the logical next step. If humans could adapt to any existing environment, why not create entirely new environments? The network was beginning to experiment with worlds that had no natural ecosystem at all. Any contact from the deep dwellers? Lisa asked. They're interested but cautious, Maria replied. Building a gas giant ecosystem is exactly the kind of project they were exiled for attempting. But they want to study our methods before committing. The deep dwellers were architects who had tried to build living buildings, structures that could grow, repair themselves, and adapt to changing needs. The Council had exiled them for creating buildings that were too strange and unpredictable. Now they were helping humanity design cities that could exist in three-dimensional space without solid ground. As the conference call ended, Lisa looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council continued their orderly existence. They managed trade routes between safe worlds. They mediated disputes over comfortable planets. They built their civilization on the assumption that the galaxy's dangerous regions were empty wastes. They had no idea that those empty wastes now contained the foundation of something unprecedented. A civilization built not on avoiding challenges, but on embracing them. A network of species that had been discarded and had turned that abandonment into strength. Admiral, Janet reported, we're receiving a priority message from the Architect relay station. Lisa turned back to her communication station. The architects still watched over their growing network, offering guidance when needed. What do they say? New contact detected. Another species has been exiled by the Council. They're being sent to Hellworld designation Omega-9. The architects want to know if we're ready for a rescue mission. Lisa smiled. 8 years ago, She had been a child playing in acid-proof suits while her parents terraformed a Deathworld. Now she commanded a fleet that could reach any hostile environment in the galaxy. "Tell the architects we're on our way," she said, "and send word to all network stations. It's time to welcome our newest members." The galaxy was about to become a little less lonely for its outcasts. 10 years had passed since humanity's exile began. The Galactic Council faced the greatest threat in their recorded history, and they were losing. Speaker Vethkari stood in the emergency session chamber, her crystal body flickering with stress patterns. Around her, representatives from hundreds of species tried not to panic as they watched the destruction spreading. Across their outer territories, the Devourers have consumed 17 star systems, reported General Thane, his forearms gesturing at the tactical display. "Our fleets cannot stop them. Standard weapons have no effect. The creatures simply absorb energy and grow larger." The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They came from beyond the rim, massive biological ships that ate everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire civilizations. Nothing could slow their advance toward the galaxy's core. "What about the new weapon prototypes?" asked Councilmember Zixtar desperately. "Useless," Thane replied. "The Devourers adapt to any attack within hours. They learn from each encounter and become immune to similar weapons." Fear filled the chamber. The Galactic Council's civilization was built on predictability and control. They had weapons designed to fight other civilized species, ships built for battles between similar technologies, military tactics that assumed their enemies would follow logical patterns. The Devourers followed no patterns except hunger. "We need alternatives," Vethkari announced. "Solutions that do not depend on conventional warfare." The chamber fell silent. For thousands of years, the Council had solved problems through negotiation and superior technology. They had no experience with enemies that could not be reasoned with or overwhelmed. Finally, a small voice spoke from the back of the chamber. "What about the humans?" All eyes turned toward Junior Science Officer Kexley, a young crystalline being who rarely spoke in official sessions. "The humans are dead," Vethkari said coldly. "We exiled them to Kepler 442c 10 years ago. Class 15. Deathworlds do not allow survivors." "But what if they're not dead?" Kexley persisted. "What if they survived? They were resourceful." General Thane made a dismissive sound. "Even if some humans survived, what could a handful of refugees do against the Devourers? We need military solutions, not desperate fantasies." But Speaker Vethkari was thinking. She remembered the strange smile on Ambassador Chen's face during the exile hearing. The human had seemed almost pleased by their death sentence. "Send a probe to Kepler 442c, she ordered. "Full stealth configuration. We need to know what happened to the humans." 3 days later, the probe dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Its sensors immediately detected something impossible: a massive space station orbiting the Deathworld, surrounded by dozens of ships unlike anything in Council databases. The probe tried to move closer for detailed scans, but its approach was detected within minutes. A sleek vessel intercepted it before it could gather useful intelligence. "Unknown probe, this is Admiral Lisa Chen of the Human Defense Network," came a transmission in perfect galactic standard. "You are in restricted space. State your identity and purpose." The probe's AI was programmed for diplomatic contact. "This is Galactic Council Survey Probe Designation Alpha 7. We seek information about human survivors on Kepler 442c. There was a pause. Then, "Follow my ship to the orbital station. Do not deviate from our flight path. This system has automated defenses that will destroy unauthorized vessels." As the probe followed the human ship, its sensors recorded everything. The space station was enormous, clearly built from materials that did not exist in Council space. Ships docked at its ports showed design principles that violated known physics. Most disturbing, the probe detected energy signatures from at least 12 different non-human species. The humans were not alone. Admiral Lisa. Chen met the probe's holographic representative in a conference room that would have been impossible to build with Council technology. The wall seemed to be made of living metal that shifted and flowed like water. The furniture adjusted itself automatically to accommodate different species. Lisa herself was clearly human, but changed. Her skin had a slight metallic sheen. Her eyes reflected light differently. Her movement suggested strength and endurance far beyond normal human limits. "We received your distress signals," she said without preamble. "The Devourers have reached Council space." "You know about the Devourers?" the probe's representative asked, shocked. "We've been tracking them for 3 years," Lisa replied. "The architects warned us they were coming. We've been preparing." "The architects? That's impossible." "They're a myth," Lisa smiled. It was the same kind of smile her mother had worn in the council chambers 10 years ago. "The galaxy is full of things the council thinks are impossible. That's why you're losing." She gestured, and the room's walls displayed tactical information about the Devourer invasion. The data was more detailed and accurate than anything the council possessed. "Your problem is that you're fighting them like they're another civilized species," Lisa explained. "The Devourers aren't civilized. They're a natural force. You don't defeat a hurricane with energy weapons. You adapt to it. What are you suggesting? We help you win. In exchange, the age of council supremacy ends. The galaxy gets a new government that includes species the council exiled or ignored." The probe's representative was programmed for negotiation, but this was beyond its parameters. "I must consult with the council." "You have 6 hours," Lisa said. "After that, we implement our own solution, with or without the council's cooperation." Back in council space, emergency sessions raged for those 6 hours. Some members wanted to accept the human offer immediately. Others insisted it was a trick or a bluff. A few suggested that humanity had somehow allied with the Devourers. Speaker Vethakari made the final decision. "We have no choice. Send a diplomatic mission to Kepler 442c. Full ambassador status." The council's fastest ship reached the human system in 4 hours. Ambassador Quolin, a floating jellyfish-like being known for her diplomatic skills, led a delegation of the council's best negotiators. They found a civilization that should not have existed. Kepler 442's surface was covered with thriving cities built into the planet's hostile geology. Massive creatures that the council had classified as unkillable predators worked alongside humans in industrial operations. The sky was filled with floating platforms that used gravitational anomalies for power. "This is impossible," Quolin whispered as her ship landed at the main spaceport. "That's what makes it work," replied Captain Rex Nakamura, who greeted the delegation personally. Rex showed the same physical modifications as Admiral Chen, but his changes were different. He moved like someone comfortable in extreme gravity. His skin had patterns that suggested he could process radiation directly. "Your species has changed," Quolin observed. "All species change," Rex replied. "The council just tried to prevent it. That's why you're weak." The negotiations were unlike anything in council history. The humans did not ask for territory or trade rights. They did not want representation in the existing government. Instead, they presented a complete restructuring of galactic civilization. "The council model is obsolete," explained Admiral Chen during the formal talks. "You built a civilization based on avoiding challenges. That worked when the galaxy's dangerous regions were empty. Now they're not." She activated a holographic display showing the true scope of humanity's expansion. 17 worlds that the council had written off as uninhabitable. Dozens of exiled species that had learned to thrive in impossible conditions. Technologies that used principles the council had never imagined. "We represent the galaxy's discards," Lisa continued. "The species you exiled. The worlds you abandoned. The problems you chose not to solve. We've built something stronger than your comfort-based civilization. What do you want?" Speaker Vethkari asked. She had joined the negotiations personally, her crystal body dim with exhaustion. "Partnership," Lisa replied. "The council keeps its core worlds and its safe routes. But the dangerous regions, the exile worlds, the species you cast out, they become our responsibility. And when threats like the Devourers arrive, we handle them. And if we refuse," Admiral Chen's expression hardened, "then you face the Devourers alone. And when your civilization falls, we'll be here to rebuild something better from the ruins." The council had no real choice. Their fleets were being destroyed. Their weapons were useless. Their entire military philosophy was designed for the wrong kind of war. "What can you do that we cannot?" Vethkari asked quietly. "Survive," Lisa answered, "and help others do the same." The human fleet that departed for the battle zone was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships built from materials forged in stellar atmospheres. Crews modified to survive in impossible conditions. Weapons that used environmental hazards as ammunition. Most importantly, they brought allies. Krillian warriors who had learned to fight in eternal storms. Sithkari infiltrators who could become anything they needed to be. Crystal consciousness beings who could process tactical information faster than any computer. The battle against the Devourers lasted 3 months. The humans did not try to destroy the alien swarm. Instead, they redirected it. They used gravitational weapons to herd the creatures toward empty regions of space.